Hello, everyone, and welcome to an update on the supply chain challenges and opportunities for 2023. I'm Elizabeth Modick, Editorial Director of GIE Media's Manufacturing Group, which is comprised of today's medical developments, aerospace manufacturing and design, and EV design and manufacturing, and I'll be today's moderator. Before we hear from Lisa Anderson, I'd like to take a moment to thank our 2022 webinar series sponsors, ISCAR and Renishaw. ISCAR is the largest of the 15 companies comprising IMC, International Metalworking Companies, and has been a leader for nearly 70 years in the development of a dynamic and comprehensive line of innovative precision carbide metalworking tools. They have developed industry-specific solutions to optimize productivity. They understand the unique requirements of each industry and continually improve and introduce new ideas for machining intelligently. And Renishaw. They are a global leader in developing technology that supports manufacturing process control. Renishaw offers an advanced range of calibration, measurement, positioning, and inspection solutions. Specified by leading OEMs around the world, Renishaw encoders, calibration, and measurement systems enable superior process control down to nanometer and picometer levels. Additionally, I'd like to thank today's webinar sponsors. Since 1948, Reed Supply is a provider of branded and private label industrial parts and supplies to the U.S. manufacturing market. Reed Supply maintains strong partnerships with leading brands, enabling them to offer a broad range of clamps and work holding products, knobs, handles, and hand wheels, tooling and positioning components, and feet casters and vibration mounts. Engineers, buyers, machine shops, and end users rely on Reed Supply for quality products, on-time delivery, and hassle-free customer service. Reed Supply serves virtually every industry, including medical, automotive, construction, packaging, food processing, aerospace, recreation, and more. Check out their catalogs online at reedsupply.com. And our other webinar sponsor is Sandvik Coromant. Since its start in 1942, Sandvik Coromant has been setting the bar beyond the industry standards and driving toward innovation. Together with the customer, they aim to create solutions and products that are unique to individual needs. We're entering the future of manufacturing, Sandvik notes. The speed of change will never be this slow again. Now, a little bit about Lisa Anderson. Ranked number 16 in SAP Supply Chain Influencers and recognized as one of the top 1% of consultants worldwide, Lisa has deep experience partnering with manufacturers and distributors to maximize value. Lisa is the founder and president of LMA Consulting Group, Inc., which specializes in manufacturing strategy and end-to-end supply chain transformation that maximizes the customer experience and enables profitable, scalable, dramatic business growth. Known for creating bold customer promises and profits, she is experienced in working with closely held, private equity-backed, and large complex organizations in a range of industries. Now, before I hand things over to Lisa, as a reminder, you may ask a question at any time by typing it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will get to as many questions as possible. Finally, a recording of the roundtable will be available in approximately 5 business days and will be emailed out to all registrants and will also be able to view on the websites. Welcome, Lisa. The Zoom platform is all yours.
All right, excellent. Well, looking forward to talking about challenges and opportunities in the supply chain. There's certainly plenty going on. So, feel free to send your questions in and I will incorporate, and respond to your needs as well. So I thought we'd start off with a picture of a basic supply chain, just to get, just to kick this off. In the old days, this is how a simple supply chain works. We have our customers, and really, I always think of it as your customer's customer. Who's the end customer in your realm? You may have a distributor supplying that customer. You may not, but generally speaking, you'll have a manufacturer. Of course, this is extremely simplified because many times there's many more manufacturers in the realm. You have a supplier, and then you have at least an additional tier of suppliers. So this is a simple supply chain, how the world used to operate many years ago. And then the world went global and it got extremely complex. And the supply chain immediately became a system of systems. And as you can see in this diagram, there's multiple manufacturers. I can't tell you how many clients ship products from one end of the world to the other, and multiple times even before it gets to an end customer because of various manufacturing operations. And then there is different, modes of operation, which have obviously become highly problematic since the pandemic. So, from container ships to planes and trucks and all sorts of other avenues. So there's quite a bit of modes in your system of systems in the global supply chain. So, we won't spend a lot of time on the pandemic because we're going to talk about our current status, but for sure, this global system of systems was turned upside down during the pandemic. We got quite accustomed to striving for efficiencies at almost the cost of everything else. Like that was our singular focus. Wherever we got it in the world, we just expected this whole elaborate system of systems to just work. And it did just work for a long time until it all, went to, I don't know what the right saying would be, but basically, hell in a handbasket or whatever you might want to say. So basically that's where we've gone to today, and we still are there. So that'll lead me to several of our challenges within the supply chain. So we have, first up, and I'm just highlighting some of the key ones here, but you'd have to be hiding under a rock not to understand that there's a problem with our rail system. We've recently averted a rail strike, which would have cost us $2 billion with a B dollars per day of economic impact if we had a rail strike. I mean, there's just immense challenges if the rail system is not functioning. And you might think, well, the good news is that it was averted because Congress passed legislation that made sure that it would be against the law, in essence, for them to strike. Well, there's still problems with rail. I mean, thank goodness it's not the kind that's going to result in $2 billion a day of negative economic impact, let alone scarcity on many items that we need on a daily basis, from food to anything that's made of plastic, which is a lot of items, many essential, to just even beverages and certainly oil and gas and and even retail sales. So there's tremendous challenges with if the rail system was to stop. But since the ports have recently got caught up. So the good news, I guess you could say, is that we've been talking about ports for the last couple of years, and why are the ports all backed up, and what's going on, and how can we resolve that problem? Well, the bottleneck has moved, and in the supply chain world, it is a system of systems, as I was saying earlier. And so, the issue there is that one system affects the next system, and so the bottleneck just moved, and it moved to rail now. The ports have seen record volumes, and they've been able to adjust. However, there are we've had some advantages that you could put in quotes, because, like, for example, China's had zero COVID policies on and off for the last year, which means that there's not as much product coming into our ports, and there are many other challenges. But the ports are no longer the bottleneck. So rail is now the bottleneck, even though the strike has been averted, because there's been a 50% to 130% increase in embargoes since 2020, 2021. And what does that mean? It means that the rail system has an embargo if they cannot fulfill all their volume. So they basically cut back and say, we have to stop taking orders, if you will. And so they've had a dramatic increase in embargoes. That's just one example. They've also had extended lead times, and there's a pile up of container ships or containers that are at the ports waiting for rail. So there's significant challenges in the rail system. And is it we could go on about all these topics, but suffice it to say, a large portion of that relates to the labor challenges. I actually wrote a recent newsletter related to this topic and goes into a lot of detail. So if you want to know more, you can sign up for my newsletters and or ask a question. So another one is the warehouses. So we have very little space throughout the United States. I mean, it's and in some key areas, there's no space. So the average warehousing vacancy rate is around 3.4%, whereas pre-pandemic it was at 6%. And that's a big, big difference. And with key markets, which is typically speaking, those close to ports, so like Savannah, Georgia, the Inland Empire is in the inland Southern California area. They have vacancy rates like 0.1% or, really, really low ability to expand space. So what do we do about that? And that's, if you can find space, then you may have the problem of, can you find people? So there's all sorts of challenges when it comes to warehousing, and that's not changing anytime soon, because have we decided that we don't like our Amazon deliveries, as an example? I don't think so. I still have several arriving at my house. And it's not just Amazon and e-commerce type capabilities, but, there's, manufacturing increases, et cetera. So there's going to be quite a bit of warehousing needs. And then if you think about it, we have realized that putting all our eggs in this risky basket, getting product from around the world and expecting it to arrive just in time without storing something for our essential customers is not the best plan. So it means that warehouse space is going to be needed. So warehouse space is the current challenge. And then last but not least is, manufacturing on this particular slide anyway. There is definitely challenges when it comes to manufacturing. As was said in the introduction, I work with clients ranging from closely held businesses to large global manufacturers. And every single client has an issue where they do not have enough people to run their operations. And so they're taking different tacks, but one of them is truly prioritizing who they're going to run for and extending lead times. And so there's, manufacturing capacity, keeping up with changing volumes, because it's easy to keep up with volume if it doesn't change. Maybe not in the, surges we had since the pandemic, but it's basically, it's rapidly changing today, is quite the challenge. So there is several, manufacturing is another critical area to keep an eye on. All right, so next up we have global issues. So from a global point of view, I've listed 3 of them, but there are many. It's quite concerning, really. So the first up is the China-Taiwan tensions. Best case scenario. Let's hope that they don't go further, but there's definitely concerning signs, to say the least. And Taiwan produces 90% of the world's advanced computer chips. We are used to our phones and living life with advanced computer chips. It's highly problematic to have 90% of anything produced anywhere, especially something so important as advanced computer chips. So really concerning. And they produce 65% of all computer chips. Now we're doing something about this because we are bringing on some capacity in the US. However, it's a drop in the bucket compared to what we outsourced over the last 20 years and our needs as compared to our needs. So it's really a topic we need to be thinking about and doing something about, and not just thinking, so hopefully somebody else will take care of this problem, because if you think so, you may be stuck without any ability. It's not just phones, but basically, if you could think of all the electronic type devices and computer devices that you use on a daily basis, like this webinar, what shall we do? Then there's also the Russia-Ukraine war. Clearly, that's a problem going on. And there's critical importance of oil and natural gas, which probably most of us are aware of, which affects everything from medical devices to to toys to there is a lengthy list of hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of items that are dependent on oil and natural gas, even things like adult diapers and baby diapers, as an example. So oil and natural gas is problematic enough. However, there's also vast impacts on food, fertilizer, and commodities such as aluminum, nickel, etc., which are also used in critical items like airplanes. And that's one of our focuses today. So there's, that is again, quite concerning. What are we going to do? There is not a potential solution near term to this problem. And what are we doing about this is another whole story. And then there's China's zero COVID policy. So just last night, they actually announced that they were relieving some of these pressures. However, China has been under lockdown in various places and shutting down manufacturing, and it's been creating utter havoc for months and going in and out of lockdowns and problems with their zero COVID policies. So, and they have not been a reliable source of information. So, they might be saying they're going to ease them today, but that doesn't mean that they have to live by that tomorrow. So we shall see. But it's made getting product from China highly risky, in addition to some other challenges associated with that. IP being the least of our concerns, but there's significant risk to U.S. companies, especially if you have a high percentage of your focus there. And actually, we have critical ingredients like active pharmaceutical ingredients that are coming, largely from like China and India. So that's concerning. We also have talent challenges, and trust me, I'm going to talk about solutions, so don't get totally depressed here, but we're just, going through, like where we stand, and then we'll talk about opportunities. And I think there is going to be some significant ones. So let's talk about talent first. But certainly talent, you really would have to be living under a rock to not know we have some talent shortages going on. There's been surges in the need for people and drops. Obviously, during the pandemic, dropped like a rocket. If you think about it, airline passenger, which isn't surprising, but it went down to 4% of its previous levels during COVID. That is dramatic. So now that we all are traveling even more than we did pre-pandemic, because we want to get out, it's no wonder that there's issues. I can only tell you that I'm traveling currently, and my suitcase was lost, and I actually had to wait at the airport because there's no baggage people and there was no people at the check-in either. They were loading a plane, and then they routed my suitcase eventually. And then the next day they said that the person was de-icing the plane, and then they would go and look for my suitcase. I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, this is insane. But anyway, there's labor shortages for sure. The workforce participation is not where it was pre-COVID. So we're still 1.3% lower than we were in February of 2020. So, and our demand is higher. So that's problematic. I mean, and 1% doesn't sound huge, but it is big. So it's a big number of people, and people are retiring and changing careers every day, not deciding not to work, staying at home with children, etc. So workforce participation is down. And then there's people versus robots. You know, the concerning thing here is we do have to get on the bandwagon of looking at how do we automate and use technology to supplement and work collaboratively with people if we plan to make it through here. So for one example that relates to supply chain, only 1% of our ports have these semi-automated terminals in the US. And then out of the 2021 Container Port Performance Index, they rate low in overall efficiency. I mean, when we compare it to places like China, we just have not been focused on automation. There are union challenges. So it basically just gives you an idea that we need more people if you aren't automating. And then there's a scarcity of skilled labor, because the more that we automate and use technology, the more skilled labor we need, but we need possibly less repetitive tasks, which is good because they tend to lead to injuries in other types of things, but bad if we don't have skilled labor, and if we have too many people who are in the non-skilled labor category that aren't increasing their skills. From a technology standpoint, there are definite concerns about cyber attacks. So, what's really interesting here is that there's like all these horrifying statistics, like global attacks increased 28% in the third quarter of 2022. But what's even more concerning is that, as a consultant working with clients, typically speaking, we're working on relatively, we can work on a small project that takes 6 weeks to a couple of months, to most of the projects and series of projects I could be working with a client for years. And so it's not as though I'm working with thousands of clients at one time. And the interesting thing is that the percentage of clients that have had a cyber attack in the last couple of years has been growing pretty dramatically. It's like over 50%, which is pretty concerning. And when, some of these that have had the cyber attacks are quite large. So they've been down, had severe customer issues, and of course, economic impact. So we do have to be concerned about this, because at the same time, we're definitely increasing our use of technology. We have to, in order to be successful. So from that point of view, modern ERP systems are required, is a must for survival, let alone our ability to thrive in today's environment. So yet many clients are still on like old archaic systems, which you can always use to a better degree, as an aside, because that's a lot of what we do to help clients is help them better utilize their systems and improve their situation, no matter their situation. However, because of the cyber attacks and because of some of the other pieces here, you're going to need to upgrade, and also it'll be in my opportunities section as well. However, 80% of ERP upgrades fail to achieve their expected results because they're not for the faint of heart. And then there's also a severe lack of data integrity and organization. I mean, it's surprising. You could work with a multi-billion-dollar client and they have the worst data integrity you can imagine. And so that is another topic where you can make dramatic improvements by just focusing in on data. So that's an opportunity as well, but it's also a problem. And they're just overwhelmed. Too much data, and they can't figure out how to look at the right data to make a decision. So there's definite challenges when it comes to data, but it's also an opportunity. So what do we do in terms of going forward for success? I figured, like, let's talk about that a bit more. So I would suggest that we start with the customer. It's always important to think about the customer, and there's probably no more important time to do that than now. Because what I see happening in the next several years is that as a pretty much dramatic transformation that we haven't seen since like the Great Depression. Hopefully we don't go through something like the Great Depression, but there will be a transformation of similar proportion, because there's just a lot going on right now with people like owner operators retiring, folks selling companies, of course, other people buying, but that's leading to, in addition to ERP upgrades, any sort of combining of companies and trying to integrate those synergies successfully has the same kind of success rate. 80% fail to achieve the success. Now, of course, it's an opportunity for those that do it well, but it's quite the challenge. We have inflation, clearly, and that's like another challenge going on currently in the supply chain. There's definitely, that actually is a big problem right now, because manufacturers are seeing continued inflationary costs of their raw materials and components, yet it's been getting harder and harder to pass on price increases to customers, because there's also concerning about potential recessions on the horizon. So really, if you take that all into consideration, the good news when you're looking at the opportunity side of this equation is that if you can get to know your customers, target who is your ideal customer, because it may not be practical to serve all of your customers. And besides, as we look at clients and we work on customer product profitability, we find that many times clients are spending 80% of the effort to serve their bottom 20% of their customers that they don't make money on. So should we really do that if we don't have resources, we don't have product, we don't have what we need to service them? Probably not. So instead, how do we look at who is our ideal customer? How do we even know? Are we looking at our customer profitability? And it's not all about profit. Who also do we want to be? Where do we want to be a couple years down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line? And what is it that our customers, what are their needs going to be for our ideal customers thinking out a couple of years from now? If you ask them, sure, it's a good idea because they may know, but many times they won't know. So you have to figure out who the heck they are and figure out what they need. It's really very important, because if you do, as folks are retiring, and the week, it's not going to be a period of time the next several years for the weak and the faint of heart. They are going to be absorbed, go out of business, or just go by the wayside. And so it will be a huge opportunity, on the other hand, for folks to emerge from this period as market leaders. And there's going to be more opportunity than there's ever been before, except for possibly during the Great Depression. The folks who invested wisely during the Great Depression and were willing to take that step forward into the bold unknown became the market leaders for the next decades. So it's the same opportunity as the great news is that there's huge opportunities for those manufacturers and other organizations to to succeed and thrive. So know your ideal customer and listen to your customer's needs. That's very important to pay attention to, not even what they say, but what will help them serve their customers. If you look at your supply chain, again, it's a system of systems. So it's definitely a key piece. And then collaborate with your supply chain partners, including not just your customers, but your customers and suppliers. There's definitely a way to look for win-win solutions and innovative ideas. Like, for example, just, in working with, when I was a vice president of operations and supply chain, we worked with our top customers to look at, is there a way? Well, there's multiple things. One is that we looked at how do we supply their facilities with what they need on time and didn't overwhelm them with inventory. So we just basically sent them what they need, when they needed it. They didn't have to worry about it at all. And it really provided a leg up in service, as an example. So that's a service to our customers. On the other hand, we also worked with customers that, how do we marry up? Like, how do we share warehouse space? After all, it's not as though all warehouses are created equal. Some companies don't utilize all their space. I mean, who does? They have excess space. And others are completely stuffed to the gills. Wouldn't it be convenient if we could collaborate with some of our supply chain partners to better allocate capacity? It doesn't just have to be warehouse space, but how do we better allocate capacity, not just even amongst our sites? Like, for example, I'm working with a client currently that was looking at how do I allocate capacity amongst the manufacturing plants in North America so they could better meet their customer needs and grow their business. But what if they could also look at, the same kind of concepts: manufacturing, distribution, transportation? We also worked with a customer to marry up loads to think about how do we just creative solutions from a transportation point of view. If you can collaborate with customers, with suppliers, maybe even with competitors, it's just how do you go about doing it? In a group of CEOs of successful companies, we talked about competition. And it was really quite interesting because the successful business owners and CEOs of larger companies, 90% of them had collaborated with a competitor in one way or another to the betterment of their ability to grow the business and be more profitable. So there's definitely opportunities if you look for them. So be thinking about how to collaborate with your supply chain partners. Quite a bit of opportunity there. Now, what about the path forward to success on your ability to supply products and services? Obviously, that's been a pretty big problem during the pandemic, following the pandemic. We just, like I said, the bottleneck keep moving around. It's not even just that. We have things we cannot control, such as some of these global issues that are waiting to create additional supply chain challenges. Like we had a global issue that was something that was just an accident, right? With the ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal, as an example. And then there are weather events. We had a hurricane recently in Florida, and it created, disruptions and delays and those kinds of things. So how do we better guarantee our ability to supply our products and services? So one is that when we're back to the customer and thinking about the customers, to customize and tailor your products and services to your ideal customer needs, not necessarily to all your customer needs. As I said, that we very much do not have resources across the board, or we cannot afford the resources that would be required to do that. But if we're tailoring them to our key customers, we can provide added value as well. So in our interactions with products, services, interactions with customers, employees, partners, one of the things that I like to ask the question of is, Have you ever seen unhappy employees serving happy customers? It just doesn't work that way. So it makes it quite the challenge. We need to add value across the board to make it, to distinguish ourselves going forward, and to be one of those people who will have opportunities and one of those companies that will thrive for years to come. So from a supply chain point of view, one of the things that's definitely going on right now is reshoring, nearshoring, friendly shoring. There's lots of names for this, but basically it doesn't mean that we need to bring back all the manufacturing, like for example, to the US that we outsourced. However, it does mean we need to be thinking about this. There are some critical items that we really should not be outsourcing to countries that could decide they don't want to send them to us just because. And those are things like medical devices, aerospace and defense parts. I mean, these things are critical to our ability to live. How about food? I mean, really, some of the basics are in peril these days. So we need to be thinking about, instead of outsourcing for the lowest cost, expecting our supply chain and system of systems to just function as we did pre-pandemic. That is no longer the case. It's not going to go back to normal, period, ever. We are in a new period of time here with pretty much nonstop disruptions and changes. And if you think about it, as we are reshoring or nearshoring, and nearshoring simply means and it's called a lot of things. Like I spoke at a medical device conference recently, and a medical technology, and they were calling it produce in China for China, which just means produce for the region that you're supplying, which means if you have a lot of customers, if your significant customer base is in, like, for example, the US, which is pretty common, then you really should be producing somewhere in the region for the region, which could mean in the US. It could mean somewhere close by, like Mexico, so nearshoring. And could be Costa Rica. But basically, are you doing that? And then are the people that you're outsourcing to, are they friendly to the US and the US relations, or could they cut you off as well? That would be highly problematic. You move it closer to your customer, and that next thing you know, you still have no supply. So of course, it's not quite this easy, because China, for example, produces to scale. It is like a drop in the bucket to even think about, as much as during this conference, Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, Mexico, they were all pretty solid producers of medical devices and had good potential, but drop in the bucket as compared to what is coming out of other regions. And so what can we do? Because if there's as many challenges as I've talked about, we need to be thinking ahead and also producing to scale. Now we have produced to scale in the US before, and Mexico has some ability to scale as well. So we just really need to be thinking about this. And it's not as simple as just making it happen. We have our raw material supply chains and other things we need to be thinking about. So, but it's something that we really need to address, and it's going to be more than just about cost. However, if you think about a non-commodity product and you don't worry about sunk costs, because after all, what you've invested in a place like China, as an example, in terms of your equipment, is not going to, most likely you aren't going to get it back. So it's more of a sunk cost. But if you look at your ongoing costs, there has been dramatic increases in cost, certainly ranging from transportation to manufacturing to inventory carrying costs. And if you add it all up, we are in close to an alignment with the US, sometimes an advantage, sometimes not. And and there's opportunities to save money as well. So anyway, it's definitely something that we need to look at. But as we start to transition production throughout the world, what do you think that's going to do? There's going to be more disruptions, of course, because things are moving around. There's transition processes. So are you going to tell the people that you're outsourcing to now that you're transitioning 50% of your production? Probably not if you actually want to serve customers. So on the other hand, it depends on what kind of relationship you have, what kind of a country you're currently sourcing from, and whether they'll have whether they'll be able to be, whether they're friendly, if you will, to the US, so they might work with you or not. There's a lot of considerations, but it's going to provide, again, nonstop changes and disruptions. So it's something to look for. But really, and the bottom line is, if you have to be able to serve your customers with products and services, customize and tailor it to their needs. And not today's needs and not all of your customers' needs, but who is it that you're looking to serve in the future? So another key process that has proven to be very successful in managing through these types of conditions that we're going to be in for the next several years is what's called sales inventory operations planning. And it's also called sales and operations planning, or an S&OP. It's one of the areas that we work with clients on most of the time to find a way to get ahead of these changing conditions, not only navigate successfully through these types of changes and challenges, but to get ahead and be in the forefront. So what this is really about is, how do you get in front of your customer demand? So one of the reasons why most of the SIOP projects have called, if they know they're asking for something like sales inventory operations planning processes, they're saying, I want to create a predictable revenue plan. They also mean their ability to fulfill that plan, but they want to create more predictability because it's just been insane. And so you have to know more about your customers' demand than they do. I mean, really, in every client, your customers can always give you valuable information, but if you don't know more about what's going on than they do, you probably won't be able to create predictability. So it's quite important, and there's a lot of strategies behind that. And then you want to create what we'll refer to as, I'll give my client credit for coming up with this term, but operational rhythm. And so that's really creating security of your supply and your ability to supply customers. So really what this means is, certain you've probably experienced the challenge of sales is out there selling products without the ability, and operations can't possibly supply those products, or, sales is selling it at low margins and yet we can't even produce in operations, or operations is really, challenged over there. I don't know what their problem is. We told them what we were going to sell, but yet they can't seem to get anything out of that facility. What is happening? So there's, all these conflicts and challenges going on. So this type of a process, of course, there's no magic wand that just solves everything, but it's a process that's an ongoing process that creates this operational rhythm that allows you to stay in front of changing conditions, assuming you, of course, follow the obvious recommendations and insights that come out of it. So you can adjust your manufacturing and supply chain footprints as needed. For example, had a client that had really significant increasing demand. They supply equipment for food manufacturing, and their volume is just dramatically scaling up. And so they couldn't, we went through all sorts of things to hire additional people, and that got them so far, but wasn't going to cut it. So not only did they outsource parts of processes, they purchased equipment like an entire paint line. They outsourced a whole process in certain cases, and we improved our ability to plan and get in front of what the schedule was in their operation so that they can increase their output by 40% out of their current facility as well. So there's lots of ways to, and that's in a case of increasing, but you also may be decreasing output in certain facilities or with, in certain industries. And you have to adjust quickly so that you're not overwhelmed with inventory or other issues. So basically, it's how do you adjust your manufacturing and supply as needed? And then how do you maximize your EBITDA, your profitability, basically, and your working capital? Working capital is quite important after all. The reason we have stuffed warehouses throughout the US, as I was saying earlier, we've had extended lead times of containers on container ships, stuck places, now possibly waiting for rail. But basically that all of that is inventory. And you have to pay for the manufacturing of your products and inventory costs ahead of time before you actually sell the product. And then you have to get paid later. So that's a significant cash flow concern. So how do we address those types of bottlenecks and plan? One of the biggest problems for smaller companies tends to be cash flow management and running out of cash, even if they are profitable. So SIOP is definitely a process to look at that could drive significant results. Again, it's a process, and it's a tailored process really for each client. So you have to be thinking there's no magic solutions. If there was, we would, I wouldn't be on this webinar. I'd probably be sitting in, I don't know, Italy, because that's my favorite country to visit, I suppose. And, twiddling my thumbs on the beach or something. But basically there are definite strategies for success here. And then talent. Oh my goodness. Like I said, there's so many challenges with talent. The only way you'll be successful in the future is if you are one of those people and one of those companies that have the talent when your competitors do not. So let's start with my favorite topic that I've been talking about for like at least 30 years now. And that is, let's talk about retaining your employees, like your key talent. I can't tell you how awful a job of this most companies do. They don't even recognize who their key talent is. It's often like a hidden person that, like, I go into clients and I'll like find these people who like are sure, yeah, like we used to do this. I have this process improvement here, but like they were, I don't know, like somewhere along the line, no one listened to them, or they dig stuff out of their desks from 10 years ago when they used to do it this way, and then they were told not to do it. They weren't allowed anymore or something. So there's plenty of talent out there. And sometimes it's just right under your nose. So take a look and find ways to retain your employees. Employee engage, which means you have to engage your employees in the process. It's there's plenty of studies out there. If you can engage your employees, you're going to be so much more successful than those who do not. You just have to look at the Southwest success story, those types of things. And you have to invest in your leaders. It's moving forward. Leaders are, it's just not a simple matter. And we do have like some changing considerations with our younger workers and their expectations of what's going to happen. We have baby boomers retiring with a ton of knowledge. So it is not going to be the easiest of situations for leaders to manage in. So it really is important to invest in your leaders. And remember, people leave people. They don't leave companies. So again, kind of leading you to needing to be concerned about your leaders. If there's anything else you need to worry about, there's plenty of things we could talk about here for days, but we don't have days. And training and development is part of it. And you've got to train for skills, You have to offer and invest in your employees' ability to gain skills. Like I lead the Association of Supply Chain Management in our area, provides excellent fundamental education on supply chain. You'd be surprised how many people are not even aware of it or don't take advantage of such inexpensive like training opportunities, if you will. And then, but you have to develop behaviors. You can't train them in, which means you need to provide mentors. If you don't have mentors, you can hire a mentor. There's many, lately, we've been filling in for clients to help them plan, help them fill in key positions or supplement key positions and provide mentoring and finding, how do we develop this organization to move forward with supply chain? That's actually becoming a big need. So you can outsource it. But there's other, you can find leaders. There's plenty of ways to go there, but you have to be able to develop behaviors. And therefore, you have to have mentors and folks who are willing to work with them. And you have to celebrate failure, which is not easy to do when, of course, you're not going to fail at a convenient time. Your employees are going to fail at month end. Of course, they're going to do that. They're going to fail with your number one customer. But you have to create enough, hopefully, guideposts so that the failure isn't like catastrophic. However, you have to celebrate the failure, which is very difficult to do when everyone's stressed out and concerned about this. But otherwise, how are you going to keep good people thinking about new ideas? Because after all, we have to innovate. So collaborate goals, set collaborative goals and reward stars and address poor performers. Sounds great, right? I can only tell you how many companies are stuck with this poor performer that drags everybody down because they won't address them. So something about talent, you really need to focus on it. Technology as well. As I said earlier, ERP is both a concern and an opportunity. Really moving forward, it's as much as you can. I have yet to meet a client where we've been unable to further utilize their system to drive a result. Although there's a few that, they had a bit of a house of cards, so we really had to be careful about it. But basically, given the needs in the modern era and the ability to see and have visibility into your supply chain and to proactively manage things, you really have got to have a modern ERP system and its related peripheral technology. So be thinking about what to do, but don't just, unfortunately, ERP is not for the faint of heart. And ERP selection projects that we work on, you have to have the right software fit, but really more importantly, you have to have the right partner fit. And that may not be the software partner, it could be the implementation partner. So there's a lot to be thinking about, but it's definitely something to start pursuing. Industry 5.0, which is really, like some of the advanced technologies like artificial intelligence, virtual reality. There's a lot of technologies out there that can supplement and improve your employees' engagement and ability to gain results that can help you with your ability to meet your customers' needs, and that can make you more efficient. And you really need to pursue it. However, as I said, you should think about the crawl, walk, run strategy. Doesn't mean you should be crawling for 5 years here, or you're going to be left in the dust, but you really should not just jump over the fence and hope everything is going to be fine, because it probably won't be. And then I just threw digital twins in here because it's kind of like a newer concept that I think is worth exploring. The idea, who knew? We had built a digital twin with a client, but I didn't even know it was really a digital twin until later when I read up on what digital twins really are. But it's basically a way to run simulations, predict the future, and synthesize data. So there's quite a bit of like the ability to, there's a lot of technology out there basically you can use to be successful. And like last but not least, so we can answer a few questions, is data. Data is really important. If there's one thing that every client says, in addition to the fact they don't have the right skills and people, it's that they have challenges with data. They basically, I mean, and really the biggest of companies have like the weirdest problems. Like they have all sorts of different items that are really the same that they have as different items in their system. They can even have customers that are all the same with different names. They have different systems that don't tie to each other. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but resolving some of those data integrity challenges that does not require that you spend like all of your time, spend a year cleaning it all up so that you can go forward. No, no, no. Like, for example, in the SIOP process I was talking about earlier, data is key. And we really take the approach, and I think I would totally recommend taking the approach of, what's your 80-20? What's important? What's critical data? What are the sales orders that you currently have? Let's start there and be directionally correct with your data integrity so that you can make good decisions. And some of that will lead to business intelligence and dashboards, the ability to slice and dice data so that you can make the appropriate decisions, or you're going to be left in the Stone Ages. Really quite critical. And then if you can go beyond that, even better with predictive analytics. So that's like predicting your future instead of just like responding to what's been happening in your past. So where are we going with 2023? I've given quite a few insights, but basically the bottom line is that the nonstop disruptions will continue, but there'll be more opportunities than have ever been around in our lifetimes, unless you were around during the Great Depression. And so why not take advantage and set yourself up for success? But it won't be for the faint of heart, because you will have to provide leaders, invest in success, do what everyone else is not doing, and follow several of these strategies that we've been talking about: having a resilient supply chain, sourcing your supply and moving it back when everyone is saying, that goodness, can we afford it? Those kinds of things. So there's vast opportunities, but the challenges will continue. So I think the strong are going to get stronger and the weak will get weaker. So Elizabeth, what questions do we have?
Well, let's see, Lisa. Thanks. Great insights as always. And we do have a question from Mandy. What are the first steps that a company should take to move from just in time to more traditional stock on hand positioning?
Well, so just in time is also the problem is just in time is a concept that actually doesn't really literally mean just in time, but I would venture to say that most companies have taken it literally. So to your point, you can't go from one extreme to the other and, go from everything arriving just in time to having inventory everywhere. After all, where will you put it? There are no warehouses available, and it will break the bank. So, one of the, I think several of the strategies we talk about today, you could, if you're manufacturing, you can produce closer to your customer. There's a less need for as much inventory if you can produce quickly. If you can customize on the fly, it kind of relates to product design. It relates to your supply chain network and how you've set it up. You can utilize 3D printing as an example. That's some manufacturing examples. But you also can just put in some common sense, good inventory practices is what I would call them, which leads back to some topics like, what are you purchasing and when, how much, how do you plan your production schedules, and how do you replenish your network, if you have a network, with inventory. If you put in some solid practices, which will be supplemented many times with a system, you don't need a new system. You can have this most of the time with whatever you have currently. You can go a long way to having the right inventory in the right place at the right time, instead of having too much inventory and going from one extreme to the other.
That makes sense. Mohammed wants to know if there is an opportunity for the last mile delivery, milk run, and some form of consolidation in this space to minimize the carbon footprint.
Yeah, there definitely is. And there's a lot of like there's micro fulfillment centers that are popping up like in the e-commerce world. And what that is like a strategy to, instead of having a distribution center and then have, all these trucks delivering to millions of houses, which is what we all want because we all want products, and even business clients want more frequent deliveries now. We all want this, but it's by no means carbon efficient, if you will. So a micro fulfillment center is where you bring it to your, like in the back of your local grocery store, you have or your local mall, you may have a micro fulfillment center that where folks can either pick up or you can deliver from a local area. And so that's, there's definitely several last mile strategies we could talk about, but yes, absolutely.
Well, it looks like we have run out of time to get to any more questions. But I do appreciate your time, Lisa. We have hit the 1 o'clock mark. And I'd like to quickly thank our webinar series sponsors again. ISCAR, a leader for nearly 70 years in the development of a dynamic and comprehensive line of innovative precision carbide metalworking tools, and Renishaw, a global leader in developing technology that supports manufacturing process control, offering an advanced range of calibration, measurement, positioning, and inspection solutions. And I'd also like to thank our webinar sponsors, Reed Supply and Sandvik Coromant, for supporting this event. Engineers, buyers, machine shops, and end users rely on Reed Supply for quality products, on-time delivery, and hassle-free customer service. Reed Supply serves virtually every industry, including medical, automotive, construction, packaging, food processing, aerospace, recreation, and more. Check out their catalogs online at reedsupply.com. And since its start in 1942, Sandvik Coromant has been setting the bar beyond the industry standards and driving towards innovation. Together with the customer, Sandvik Coromant aims to create solutions and products that are unique to individual needs. We're entering the future of manufacturing. They know the speed of change will never be this slow again. And I also want to remind everybody of 2 upcoming events we have. It's our last manufacturing lunch and learn of 2022, taking place next week on Thursday, December 15th, starting at 12 p.m. Eastern Time with Heidenheim. And they will be looking at how to step into digital manufacturing. And then we start off 2023 with Terry Wohlers, the expert in additive manufacturing and 3D printing. And he will be giving his insights about advances and challenges in additive manufacturing. So join us on January 11th, 2023 at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And there online, you see how you can reach out and contact Lisa to see how she can help you with supply chain and issues. So thank you again, Lisa. I appreciate your time, and thank you to all of the attendees today.
Yes, and if anyone has questions they'd like me to answer, feel free to drop me a line. I'd be happy to answer some additional questions.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lisa. Everyone have a wonderful afternoon.